Thanks, Sir Naveen. Moving ahead, dear participants, I would like to welcome on stage our very first set of eminent panelists for our very first panel discussion themed as opportunities and impediments to revolutionize retail and e-commerce with XR. The very first eminent panelist on board with us is Mr. Arome Ibrahim. He is a co-founder and 360 VR developer at Experis Immersive. Then we have our second eminent panelist, Ms. Sarah Eliza Steele. She is the Chief Scientific Officer at Apex NEURO. Then we have Mr. Ryan Johnston. He is a PhD researcher at Ulster University. And our last eminent panelist is Mr. Badal Dixit, founder and managing director of PearlQuest Interactive. And last but not the least, we have our eminent panel moderator, Ms. Debra Stewardson. She is the director of Hology and also an XR consultant. Over to you, Debra, and all the very best to the entire panel.
Debra, you're on mute. Debra, if you can unmute yourself.
Better?
Perfect, yeah.
Great, sorry. Thank you, Bridget. And hello, welcome to everyone joining us today. Bridget, I believe we will be taking some questions, which will be on the chat option, if anybody has any.
Yes, towards the end, Debra.
Brilliant, okay. So I do know that we don't have that much time, so I'm going to start with a very brief overview and some thoughts on the current XR market before I open up some questions to the panel. And I'll start by saying that clearly XR and associated production techniques have many different use cases across many different industries. For me personally, working in media and entertainment, I see XR enabling interactive and immersive experiences that open up new and innovative retail e-commerce and v-commerce opportunities. I do think we're only just beginning to see what the true potential is, and especially if we look at the escalation and convergence of XR and emerging technologies and how we can use these to unlock further value in both virtual and real spaces. So obviously components of XR play a critical role in powering up almost all interactive and immersive experiences, and are going to be key to the evolving metaverse and things like massive interactive live events, which, although many may consider to be in infancy, are starting to really drive the value exchange for brands and their customers. I think this is probably already true when we look at the consumer's behavior in regard to the importance of their virtual identity and how this is how it translates into real life value. If we look at, for example, digital and physical products or digital fashion, digital assets that are being marketed and sold in virtual spaces, we can easily see the retail and e-commerce opportunities and where there is perhaps more value to be found. I also think we are seeing a transition from Web 2 to Web 3. And although I would say there are certain issues that need to be ironed out and improved, it is going to be interesting to see how XR and spatial computing, IoT and blockchain technologies, for example, will continue to evolve and integrate, and the added value that this will bring to creators and customers. So I guess the ability really to create, interact and influence, virtual and hybrid experiences is of course only really made possible through the utilization of things like games engines, XR and associated production techniques, which of course in the wider context have equally important value outside of media and entertainment, which is my focus. That's going to lead me to a question to Ryan. Hi, Ryan.
Oh, hello, hi.
Hi, how are you?
Very good, thank you. It's an honor to be here today.
Good. So obviously, as I've said, you know, I focus quite heavily on media and entertainment at XR, and I wanted to ask, in your field of work, what your current views are on XR and associated technologies, and how these can be utilized or scaled up in retail environments.
Yeah, I think for this, it's really important to take a multidisciplinary view. And what I mean by that is taking a page from my own experience. It's kind of very focused on geospatial data and location data, which is currently used quite widely in the retail market to understand where your customer base is, where your retail deployment should be in a more traditional two-dimensional map sense. There's other dimensions to GIS that would include three-dimensional scanning, aerial LiDAR that would be used in more construction industries and other sectors. But by using that knowledge of what technology is available, that can be carried across into the gaming and entertainment industry to then improve their workflows, and then by a result of that can then support the creation of highly accurate environments. When I'm talking environments, I mean internals of a building, internals of a retail shop, entire cities, and then scaling up potentially to entire countries at a certain point. It's very difficult and costly to produce that, but the geospatial methods that are already in existence can help reduce those costs and barriers to entry. You also have the deployment of things like Apple products, where now the new Apple products have LiDAR scanners built in. So we're seeing consumer grade technology that improves that, which is kind of related to that spatial aspect. And then understanding where your spatial component fits for internal within a retail space or external allows you then to overlay these augmented reality filters. There's a lot of different skills, a lot of different technologies at play there. So it's important to either have the teams on board that have that knowledge, or to be able to partner with other organizations that have the gaps in knowledge that can help fill your areas to be able to solve those solutions. I think also that's one side of what you might call digital twin of the creation of a physical space. You also have, for a retail side, digital twins potentially of the products themselves. And you might think then of jeans, t-shirts, jackets, clothing. These LiDAR technologies can support the creation of that, and then can then be blended. So if someone was to go into a shop and buy a physical product, they might get a QR code or a coupon or a discount that then also allows them to get a digital twin version of that same product that they can then assign to their digital avatar, their digital selves, that allows them then to represent themselves in the metaverse. And when we talk about the metaverse, it's still an evolving concept, but that's something whereby it's a recreation of potentially either a real place or a fantasy environment where you can represent yourself and attend either in the workplace or for entertainment, for leisure, or for socializing with friends and family. But people will still want to represent themselves as who they are or who they would like to be. And that's something to consider in terms of how people do that. So that will be a clothing, it'll be a branding, it'll be additional products there that could be related to that retail section. And in terms of how that's costed is open for discussion as well. And I think then that brings opportunity and risk. So there's opportunity to get involved with these new technologies and to be able to see how they work. There's the risk that not all of these technologies and investments will go through. Some of them will work, some of them won't. Some of them will definitely be more successful than others. It's just kind of to wait and see, and plenty of research to understand what is the most likely case there. But there's also the risk of if you think of the internet, the companies then that didn't get involved at that in an early stage got left behind very, very quickly. And we're potentially in a similar position now today with that. And an issue that we have within the UK and Europe here is what we would call the death of the high street, where online retailers, traditional web retail, has taken customers and money away from the physical streets and the physical presence of stores and taken it online because of the cost competition. And I think there's an opportunity, there's a risk that could continue, but with these new immersive technologies, there's an opportunity then to reinvigorate the high street, create new products and services that encourage people to go to a physical presence to be able to get an experience they can't get anywhere else, whether that be a coffee with additional digital services, and then be able to interact with these new immersive technologies in a new way, I think is very important. So I think that technology data, and very important then, is that consumer experience is crucial, I think.
Absolutely. I think you've kind of nailed it there with you know, the opportunities of the metaverse, and certainly the hybrid opportunity in terms of virtual and real, and the potential that's out there. Thank you. I actually think that that brings us to another important topic, which is that of the end user and the connection to the experiences in VR, for example. I'm going to push this one to Sarah because your work is really interesting. And I'd like to ask about the work you're doing where you're looking into the improvement of human-centric experiences in VR. And I know this is all through the lens of neuroscience. So yes, we'd just love to know a bit more.
Yeah. So what I'm really passionate about is we're obviously, we're pioneering a new age now, and how far this is going to go, we don't know. We don't know how big or how kind of consuming the metaverse can become. But as you say, the potential of VR and the potential of XR is incredible. But how I'm seeing this, which is slightly different from a lot of kind of the developers and the designers, is we have an opportunity to create spaces that are extremely human-centric, and we understand now through the advancements of technology and through data how the brain works, how human psychology functions. So what I would like to start kind of discussing is, can we create spaces with neuroscience in mind, and can we bring the agile framework, which is heavily focused on understanding the user, coming at things from a user-centric perspective? Can we bring neuroscience and meet those two things in the middle and create kind of a hybrid framework where we are, as digital leaders, as Kanya said, we want to be customer obsessed, and that means really actually understanding every single person that puts on a headset will have a brain, and that's the one thing that's going to unite everybody that touches an immersive experience. If we can understand how the brain works, then we can create experiences that truly engage people and deliver amazing outcomes, and we can also measure those outcomes objectively. So if you consider the fact that the emotions influence your perception and your environment influences your emotions, so you have this circular interaction where if you are very clever and come at this from a neuroscientific lens, when you're doing a design, you can validate how your products are working. You can you can skip these pitfalls, as Kanya mentioned, by actually applying neuroscience to your decision making when you're choosing, okay, how should this experience feel? And this can cross back over into the real world, because as Ryan said, you're starting to build these experiences where people can move from digital to real world and back again. And again, this is how we really get very engaging different experiences in the real world. We start to understand, okay, how are our consumers interacting with these different offerings that we're providing? So it's really important to me that the kind of the cognitive side, the emotional side, and the behavioral side of people, that's put first in design, and that's put first in development, and that's actually what guides our decision making. So we've got a great opportunity now, and I'm very passionate about people starting to consider how we create these frameworks when this is just starting to be birthed into kind of a new stage. So I guess where my consideration on the other side of that is, if this is going to be adopted by the masses, we really do need to think about what are the constraints and how do we start to get mass adoption, and then how do we make it work for all users? So yeah, I think that's maybe a good question to put forward.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think it is actually imperative to ensure that content sort of meets each person as an individual, and it's having, I think, the ability to remain unique inside of these virtual spaces where we're not being overwhelmed or I guess, told what to see or to experience all the time. And it's that the ability to have something let people imagine, or let people enjoy virtual spaces but still have equal time for their real life identity. So it's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. And again, we are at the very beginning of these kind of, I guess, research patterns and all the rest of it. And you have said that we've got some challenges to overcome. Badal, this is going to be one that I am going to push to you, which is what you perceive the main challenges to be when we look at sort of the impact on retail and the metaverse in a wider sense. Hello, by the way, Badal.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for having me. So yeah, I think it's a very valid and important question because I come and I speak from the standpoint of business, the business ecosystem, and also clients when we talk to prospects and what challenges do we come across while even proposing these solutions. So I think there are quite a lot of barriers to entry when you talk of the technology in general, the metaverse itself, like Sarah pointed out, and even Ryan said about how it's kind of an amalgamation of different technologies together. But if we are only focusing on retail and e-commerce, then definitely I think content acquisition and customer education, these two are the main challenges. So if I talk about content acquisition, the idea that 2D content is very easily available and can be acquired very seamlessly, because there are repositories, there are image libraries, there's photography, which is become much easier. There are platforms like Shopify and WooCommerce where it maybe takes a few days to get your e-commerce shop online. All you need is a set of pictures and details about each product. Whereas if we talk about the 3D world, which is the metaverse, or let's say the adoption of XR itself, the 3D content is not out there yet. And the primary reason for it is acquiring or capturing this content is still a challenge. Creating the content and rendering it for usage is going at light speed, no doubt about it. A simple example would be, let's say, the IKEA catalog. Now it consists of all their furniture pieces, but the whole IKEA catalog doesn't have a single photo. All the furniture items there are 3D modeled, and they are rendered to photoreal or almost we could say hyper realistic quality, because we wouldn't see it as something which has been created from scratch, and that's how they have implemented that into their catalog. Now, from an economical point of view, I think that's much better and much faster for them to replicate. That's how it works really well for easier or simpler 3D objects. But when it comes to apparel, clothing, humans, complex shapes and sizes, we have to rely on technologies like photogrammetry or volumetric capture. If you are looking at a very complex shape and you want to show an animated model, a simple 3D object can't do the deal. So the content acquisition currently is a challenge. So if let's say an apparel store comes up with 1,000 pieces of their clothing, and you want to capture each of them, either using LiDAR or any other technologies, that the framework and the infrastructure is still not in place to get it up and running as fast as a 2D e-commerce platform, right? So that definitely is one challenge. And the other is customer education. Like the clients still are not well aware of the potential of these technologies. Like they still don't know the great potential. It's kind of opening up to AR now, with AR and retail kind of merging together. I wouldn't say completely yet, but they still see the fun and the marketing potential when you have some AR models, especially through WebXR. Now that it's become much easier, you don't need an app. All you need is just your mobile browser, and you can start getting these AR experiences in place. But with VR, they still don't know the potential that tomorrow, when this comes to the next level, we can actually envisage huge 3D spaces, which are like malls. I mean, we are quite crazy about malls in this region, in Qatar and in UAE. Everyone likes to go to malls, and there is a potential to create even bigger and amazing spaces in the metaverse, and they can be backed up by blockchain and cryptocurrencies. Everything can be such a perfect user journey or a customer journey, which is still not very clear to the customers yet, or to the potential clients yet. So that's definitely one challenge which needs to be which needs to be addressed. And I think the best way to overcome these two challenges, one is with content acquisition, is I think we need more investments in in content capture, volumetric capture. We need more studios in this region. Like the only, in fact, this brings me to a small case study with the current project we are doing. And we didn't find even one volumetric capture studio in the whole of Dubai or Middle East. All of them are in the UK or the US. So, you know, there is a growing need and demand for capturing content in 3D, data in 3D. And with forums like these, I think that we definitely can get an extra edge with education. Like if there are clients and if there are people who can influence retail clients in this forum, we need more such events to happen so that we take that extra step of educating the customer. So I think that's, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's quite interesting that you say like about volumetric studios, because I think in the UK we're seeing them open up literally every week, which I guess it probably comes from the film industry, because we do have obviously the big studios in the UK, and obviously XR typically, if you think of like James Cameron and Avatar and all the rest of it, is a lot of virtual production, and certainly the techniques that are being used have come, you know, through the film industry. So we're quite lucky in that sense, where I guess the technology is possibly a little bit more understood here. I'd say that from a customer perspective, I would agree with you that there is still so much, there's so many opportunities to look at. And you say like the metaverse and that sort of hybrid retail space and all the rest of it. And we certainly, we're nowhere near that full potential yet. But yes, content, you know, you say content and you say opportunity, and, you know, that technically is what we need to look at when we do have these, what's the word I'm looking for? These things that we need to get through and all the rest of it. Thank you, Badal. Actually, that's going to bring me to Arome, because Arome works, I think, quite a bit in the education system, if I got that correct. And you're building VR experiences, and obviously you have a client list and all the rest of it. So I'd like to ask what your outlook is in terms of, let's call it the key infrastructure that businesses need to set up in order to deploy AR or VR experiences, and sort of what these services and offerings could be.
Great. Thank you so much, Debra.
Thank you. And hello,
so first of all, I'm excited to be here. I'll be sharing my perspective from, should I say, an African view, because I'm from Africa and also I reside in Nigeria. So for us, AR VR is quite very, very new. We don't have much startups or companies that are delving into that space. And the ones we have currently are still trying to wrap their head around this technology, right? And for us, we believe encouraging businesses, like small businesses and large scale businesses, to adopt this technology is a lot of work, right? And just as somebody said, we have to orientate the end users first on this technology and its benefits for them to see the value of it, right? So for us, in terms of education, our core target is, first of all, to support the educational institutions like schools, training centers, to embed, by not replacing teachers, right, but supporting teachers with this technology to teach the students better and give them another perspective of viewing the world, right? Because most students might not have the opportunity to leave their space or see places they have never visited before, right? But with this technology, it's super amazing. I remember the first day I wore the VR headsets, I was really, really transformed, right? And then in terms of what businesses can adopt or implement, right? For example, we have Jumia, which is like the largest e-commerce platform here in Nigeria, right? They have thousands of catalogs of products and also services, right? So if it's possible for them to embed 3D scans of their actual product to help to disrupt the space of whereby you order for maybe this mouse online and you're getting a different version of it, right? But with AR and VR, the end users can be able to visualize what the end product would look like, in detail, right, for them to make informed and also actual decisions, right? I know it's a lot, right, but for these businesses to set aside a certain amount of their own income, adopting this technology as early as possible will really, really help them in the future to expand and also grow.
Yeah, it's I guess it's almost that thing of like you're almost bringing like some fun into the space. And I know that certainly in Africa, mobile devices are, I mean, we can all see what the statistics are. So everybody has a mobile device, and of course we're talking about 5G and 6G, you know, 6G coming out and what these opportunities will be. So yes, it's a really interesting market to be in. I think the obvious, you know, there's some, if we talk about VR and we're talking about headsets and we're talking about glasses or head-mounted devices of any sort, we still obviously have not seen, I think, full consumer adoption quite yet. And, you know, I think what we hear is that everybody is saying that at some point, possibly next year or the year after, when Apple brings out their glasses, whatever it is, like these devices will become as ubiquitous as your mobile phone. And I know that pre-COVID, we were saying that would take 10 years, but certainly this escalation is that we can probably half that time now. So I think, all in all, with what everybody has sort of said in this panel, you can see how much opportunity there is, and I think how exciting the market is to be in at the moment. And whether you're working on creativity or production or development, like these technologies are just incredible and really have so much value in terms of just everything. Yeah. I don't have any more questions. Bridget, have any questions come in?
No, Deborah, as of now, I don't see any questions. However, if there are any, we will email those questions to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, just to let you know, we've got close to about 147 delegates who are in fact live watching this session. So yes, just keeping you informed. Yeah, interesting discussion there. We hope to receive a few questions which will be sent across.
Lovely. I have lost track of time slightly. Do we have more time, or am I?
Yes, Debra,
You have 6 minutes, yeah.
I have 6 minutes. So I want to come to something that I think Ryan and Badal, and actually I think this is quite relevant to everything that we've all said something, or we've all sort of mentioned it slightly, are these digital twins. And what, let's say, what these, the potential that these have in virtual and real spaces. Because again, you know, I'm looking at it like media and entertainment, and the buzz in London is like, oh, it's great, we can go and scan events venues and put them into virtual spaces. And obviously there is a lot more we can do in that space, and whether it's education or, like you're saying, cities, what is the full potential there, and what sort of technologies are going to improve that? Because there are some pretty, I think, decent packages out there which are propelling it or moving it forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Badal.
No, you could start, Ryan, no problem.
I think, again, it's the data technology people kind of thing. It's the skills understanding what it is and what you need to do. So digital twins becoming a very big thing in construction and architecture, where we have our digital twins. So what that is, it's taking the real building or the proposed real building and creating that as a digital version proposed to plan. And that includes both the objects. What I mean by objects is the 3D shapes, just so that you can visually see it. But then the twinning part often comes from the data. So you would assign your materials, you understand what bricks, what properties, as much information as possible about that, even into additional dimensions beyond 3D, so including time, cost, and that starts to go into kind of BIM a little bit, but digital twins can then be applied to the automotive industry. It could be applied to retail in terms of, as I mentioned before, about the products. So if it's TVs, laptops, clothing, trainers, it's about taking the real and making it virtual, which I'm a big fan of, simply because that's my background in terms of GIS, and what that's about is taking the real worlds, whether it be terrains, mountains, people, and making that digital. And when I say people, that would be about taking demographics, so age ranges, education, income levels, and converting that into a digital format that can be analyzed and used, which is used currently in retail. That's traditionally two-dimensional data, but that could be combined and overlaid in some of these environments. So if you imagine, if you fly a plane over with a scanner and create a 3D city, so you've got your first layer of your 3D buildings, and then you inject then the transport system, and then you suddenly have your buses and things going past. You maybe include some IoT with scanners or imagery cameras to be able to capture the footfall going past retail sites, and combine that with demographics around who those people might be potentially. You can then start to inject synthetic populations, so estimates about who could be going where, and then you can start to have a lot of fun, sort of play around, either for gaming and entertainment purposes or for more serious applications in terms of modern world, predicting how COVID and things could spread, or in terms of predicting how people might react in terms of events, big football gatherings, big gatherings of people, in terms of planning for transport, and also for planning for new technologies. In a previous role, we did something similar to understand how you might introduce the safe deployment of connected autonomous vehicles, so self-driving cars, which you can do completely, in a safe environment if it's done digitally. And if the more accurate that environment, you can run through different safety scenarios, because it's as close to the real thing as can be, down to millimeter and centimeter accuracy. And then you can then start to ask different questions. Well, we have a retail store here. How might people get there? It's X amount of distance from the train station, the nearest public transport. That's a last mile connectivity problem. Well, do we need advertising to bring people up, or how do we encourage them, or do we need a shuttle service or connected autonomous vehicles, or do we need to relocate somewhere else? And you can start to ask and play around with some really interesting questions.
Would this work in the same capacities that, like, if we're starting to look at like shared workspaces, and certainly using the same technology where you have holographic imagery, for example, where, and certainly like in medical fields, I think it's starting to become a bit more prominent, and possibly in education or engineering. Again, this is slightly outside of media entertainment, but that's where I see the digital twin thing as being or something that has like really incredible value. We look at it in terms of if you're putting on a performance, or if you are doing virtual scouting or something for a film, but everything can be done through VR, and obviously the more real that image is, the better it is, because you're going to get a better end result. So I find it quite interesting from that the team collaboration perspective.
Yeah, I think I could give my 2 cents on that. I mean, it's actually the application or the usage of digital twins is cross industry. Like Ryan said, currently for simulation and for calculations and in the field of industrial and manufacturing, it really has a perfect use case. Also in retail and e-commerce, as we said, eventually the metaverse will evolve to a level where it's an alternate space. It's an alternate retail space. So all the people who are producing goods, the people who are trying to sell through the metaverse, would like the products to replicate the actual product. So as of now, if it looks not really close to or what we wouldn't call a digital twin, it's like remodeled, versus a perfect digital twin can give that additional enhanced look to it, which entices the users to go ahead and take the next step of buying it. So in the retail and e-commerce domain, it's very important that many of the products are exact replicas of what they are. Like, we were recently talking to a prospect where what they were trying to sell are very abstract pieces of like artistic pieces. and they're more of decorative pieces for furnishing, which are very difficult to remodel, like in 3D Max or in any software. So the only way was to figure out better ways to capture them in a way that it look exactly the same. So it's very relevant in retail and e-commerce going forward as this space grows further and further.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you know, coming back to Sarah and with your work, you know, we're still right at the beginning of looking at the actual impact that this has on people. So it's
yeah, I think we've got a lot to learn with regards to kind of, we're only just starting to understand the human brain. The human brain is the most complex system we've ever encountered. So the concepts of things like perception and how the brain can handle 3D objects, how you remember spaces, how you have kind of an emotional reaction to spaces, all of these things that we are sort of understanding in the real world, we'll have to relearn again when we start to transfer these over. So it's not just a case of, I mean, replicating objects is, you know, fairly simple in one respect, but if you're starting to replicate an entire experience or people or the more subjective elements of life, basically, things like when you kind of interact with the world, there's a series of things happening. There's movement, there's sound, there's weather conditions. Your body is constantly taking in information, making sense of it and perceiving the world around you. And we don't entirely understand how that happens in reality. So we do have somewhat of a challenge when we come to building these new metaverses that are supposed to be these all engaging places where, for a neuroscientist, I look at like the cognitive load and I think actually sometimes when you put VR on, it can be absolutely beautiful, but it completely overloads your brain and you want to get out after 10 minutes because we're not used to the way the technology works. So it's going to be fascinating to watch how science and designers and developers and architects all come together, and we're going to have to work together to make this make sense and make this amazing.
Absolutely. It's like the technology, and there's two different sides. There's two different sides to it. There's development of the technology and the development of the research that goes into the, you know, into the actual user. And that's actually that's another point. You know, well, you talk about interoperability and you talk about the metaverse and different systems. And again, you know, we're only just skimming the surface of it in terms of, you know, what we actually need to make it work. Will one technology dominate another? Does anybody have an opinion on that?
Cheers. Well, while that happens, I mean, I must say we just kind of exceeded the session time. But Debra, yeah, I mean, if there's any response to that question that you just asked, we can continue. But we have some interesting questions from audience too, quite a few. But then we've picked up two, which if you could probably, you know, get that answered. So if you allow, I can ask them. Yeah. So we have a question, yeah, which is from one of the delegates from UAE, which says, how should people in PR, I assume it's public relations, how should people in PR use XR? So this is one of the questions. So any take on that?
Hey, Badal?
How should people in PR use XR?
I think this kind of connects to the future of social VR to an extent. I mean, at this point of time, I can't think of a direct application of PR apart from you know, PR extending to marketing, where you are doing marketing campaigns which use this technology. But if you think of PR, which is a very people-driven, it's a very social field in which there is actual human interaction. That does tie in really well with these social platforms as events start happening in the metaverse. There's already so many events happening in alt space, in VR chat. There are conferences happening in VR where we see each other's out there. Now, all these PR campaigns can be extended to these platforms. I mean, it's still quite at the infancy stage in this region, but in the Europe and the US, there are events happening which are completely in a 360 virtual world. I'm not talking about these virtual events which you see on your laptop screen. I'm talking about the ones where you wear a headset and literally get inside these events. Now, that's where interaction with people, advertising and PR will sort of seep in eventually, as this gets more popular. Like even last year, Burning Man happened in VR when it was COVID, and the whole we could actually get that experience inside the Burning Man environment, right? Like with all immersive art exhibits. So PR is more of a extension of this human interaction, right? So eventually, I would say that as the metaverse evolves, it will find its perfect role in the 3D world itself.
Perfect. Yeah. Thanks there. I hope that has kind of answered. So yes. So one last question. I mean, maybe a minute or two, if somebody could take this. So it's again from one of the delegates, which says, what is the panel's view on compatibility between different systems? Will there inevitably end up with one technology platform dominating?
I think this is where we end up with interoperability, and that I mean, we can all see what's happening with, like, obviously Meta, which is Facebook, and all the rest of it. And there are lots of different platforms all, I think, diving into the metaverse. But the metaverse at its core is not meant to be, it's meant to be quite decentralized. So it's not, it shouldn't technically belong to one company. And I think if you look at what the metaverse actually means in principle, and we're talking about shared virtual spaces that that are joined together, and that's about having a user being able to move between one virtual world or space to the next, and if they can take their items with them, then that's what they should be able to do. So that the metaverse isn't only a place for media and entertainment, like you said. It could be go and buy a car, or you go and clothes shopping. You could be doing anything. So one technology technically cannot try to control it in its full capacity. And if we look at blockchain, and I think blockchain is a technology that has incredible potential, and it's not new. It's been around a while, but it's in infancy, and it's it's got its obvious problems, and they're things that we shouldn't really, I think, ignore. We do need to address those challenges, but its core value, it's about data and how we can safely and securely exchange that data and technically open up the metaverse, where we're talking about a platform that isn't dominated by one company. And I think that is important for brands, and you talk about PR and all the rest of it, to say that it's an opportunity for everyone. It's an opportunity whether you want to build a single virtual world space, or places that we see like the Centraland, where you're selling land plots. It's a place that has different, to me, a creative aesthetic. So depending on the user and what they want and what their particular need is, they'll be able to travel between these different worlds, but carrying their taking their virtual identity with them. And again, this virtual identity, I think, is incredibly important, and it's in retail and e-commerce, and I think v-commerce will start to hear the word a bit more, because that's the transaction of literally virtual world items is definitely something where we're going to need far more interoperability, just for the metaverse, I think, in principle, to actually develop to its full potential.
Perfect. Rightly said, Debra. Yes, I hope, yeah, that's answered the question there. And yeah, it's not just one technology which can dominate. Of course, the multiple. I mean, it's open for everyone. So yes, thanks so much. I know 40 minutes is not sufficient for a discussion like this, but due to the restrictions, we have to move on to the next sessions. And I would like to thank Debra, Badal, Ryan, Arome, and Sarah to, I mean, in terms of having this discussion and making it, interactive. So yeah, so thank you so much. So over to you, Bridget, if you can announce the next session.
Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks.